rushed to the car and banged on the driver's window. The tinted window rolled down, and the driver looked at me with concern and asked, "Hey kid, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sir. Please can you take me to the hospital?" The driver glanced nervously at the back seat where a cold, elegant woman was sitting. I knew the driver answered to her, so I walked straight to the back seat and knocked on the window. "Ma'am, could you give me a ride? My grandma's in critical condition. I need to get to the hospital. Please help me." The driver heard what I said and was clearly moved. Then a cool, crisp voice came through. "Get in." The driver was relieved and quickly told me to hop in the front. But then the woman in back spoke again. "Sit in the back." The driver paused, then hurried out to open the back door for me. I was in too much of a rush to care. I jumped right in. The moment I sat down, I caught a lovely, subtle fragrance. It actually calmed me down a little. I said, "Thank you." Victoria glanced at me and gave a soft nod. The car cruised smoothly down the road. Thankfully, it was late and the streets were empty. So even though the driver was going fast, it was totally fine. I mean, not many people would risk their life just to hitch a ride like I did. Half an hour later, the car pulled up to the hospital. I barely had time to thank Victoria before I bolted out and ran straight to the OR. The driver watched me go, then turned to Victoria and asked, "Ma'am, what now?" Before he could finish, Victoria had already opened her door and was heading into the hospital. The driver didn't waste a second and followed her out. They quickly found me standing outside the operating room. Grandma had already been rushed into surgery. I had just gotten there. When a nurse came rushing out and told me to go pay the surgery fee, I held the bill in my hand, my fingertips turning white. But I had no money to pay just then. Victoria's crisp voice came from behind Old Wang. "Go pay the bill." The driver, Old Wang, stepped right up and took the bill from my hand and rushed off to the billing window. I just stared at Victoria, my eyes getting misty. I said, "Thank you, seriously, thank you so much." My voice was breaking. Victoria's expression didn't change. She just pulled a clean handkerchief from her pocket and held it out to me. "You're welcome." I took the handkerchief. My throat felt like it was closing up. All the pain I had been holding in just came pouring out because of this stranger's kindness. Tears rolled down my face one after another. Splashing onto the floor, Victoria watched me, but she didn't say a word of comfort. She just stood there quietly by my side. Old Wang came back pretty quick. He glanced at Victoria first, then walked over to me and said, "Hey kid, don't cry. The bill's been paid, your grandma's gonna be just fine." Tears kept streaming down my face with no sign of stopping. Seeing me like that reminded Old Wang of his own son, and his heart ached a little. Victoria looked at Old Wang and he caught on and walked over to her. They whispered for a moment, then Old Wang left with a big smile. Not long after, Old Wang came jogging back with a bag. He handed me a hot cup of milk tea and said, "Here kid, drink some tea, it'll warm you up." I looked at Old Wang with my red puffy eyes, about to thank him, but then he said, "The young lady told me to go get it for you." I looked at Victoria and said thanks again. I must have said thank you a dozen times tonight. 2 hours later, the OR doors finally opened. My childhood sweetheart pretended to be broke this whole time, just to test if I was only after her money. And her final test was blowing through $100,000 I had worked so hard to save. That was the money to save my grandma's life for her surgery. I stared at my drained bank card. I was in total shock and couldn't process it. I held back my anger and asked gently, "Ruby, where did you spend the money?" "Can you get it back?" Ruby went silent on the other end of the line for a long time. Then suddenly she said this, "Ben, what if I told you I already spent it, and I can't get it back? What would you do?" The second I heard Ruby spent the money, all I could think was, it was gone. Grandma wouldn't be able to get the surgery. I was going to lose the last family I had. Ruby noticed I wasn't saying anything, so she said in a casual tone, "Benny, I know I should have told you first, and that's on me, but the money's already spent. You're not mad at me, right? I mean, it wasn't even that much. Once I make more money later." I didn't wait for her to finish. I just hung up and stood there in front of the hospital billing window, completely lost. All of a sudden, I got a text from an unknown number, room 302 at Jesse's bar. "There's a surprise waiting." Unknown number, weird message. But for some reason, this sense of dread started creeping up on me. I hesitated for a few seconds, then I rushed out of the hospital. Grabbed a cab straight to the bar, and there was Ruby. To put me to the test, she had invited all her sketchy friends out. Calling it an early celebration of our 1-year anniversary, drinks were flowing. When the VIP room door slowly pushed open, everyone turned to look. A thin figure was standing quietly in the doorway. When they realized it was me, Ruby shot up from her seat and rushed over to the door. Her face was full of panic and confusion. She had no idea why I suddenly show up and asked, "Ben, what are you doing here?" Ruby looked totally flustered. She reached out trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Ruby's heart sank. She grabbed my hand desperately and tried to explain. "Benny, it's not what you think, let me explain." I looked at my girlfriend and suddenly gave her a gentle smile and said, "Ruby, let's break up." My voice was soft, but rock solid. Ruby froze for a moment. Then she shook her head like crazy. No, I'm not breaking up." "Benny, I can explain, I swear I can explain." I pried her fingers off me one by one. My tone was gentle but firm. "I've made up my mind, Ruby, just let me go. All I'm asking is for you to give me back my money." After a year together, Ruby knew I meant what I said. Once I set my mind on something, nobody could change it. If I said we're done, there was absolutely no going back, but Ruby didn't want to break up. She was so close to being with me forever. She begged, "Benny, please, don't break up with me, okay?" I looked at her calmly. My eyes swept across everyone in the room and finally landed on number 10. From an angle Ruby couldn't see, number 10 flashed me a smug smirk. Her lips moved as if she was saying, "You can't beat me." I looked at Ruby and slowly said, "Fine, we won't break up. But give me $100,000 right now. All I need is $100K. Ruby looked a little uneasy. She bit her lip. "Benny, can you just give me one more day? Tomorrow I'll give you whatever you want. Whatever you need, just not today. Please." I looked at her with disappointment. My lips trembled for a moment, and after a long pause, I managed to say weakly, "Ruby, all I want is the money in my bank account. Give it back, and from now on we go our separate ways." Ruby still tried to hold on, but right then my phone rang. The instant I saw the caller ID, my pupils dilated. I answered without a second thought. Whatever they said on the other end made my face go completely pale. I turned to leave, but Ruby grabbed my wrist. She begged, "Ben, I don't want to break up." I struggled. "Ruby, let go of me." "No, I don't want to break up. Stay until tomorrow. I'll give you whatever you want." I glanced back at her. Then I slapped her across the face hard. We're done for good. I broke free from her and walked away without looking back. I rushed out of the bar in a panic, but it was already late at night. Not a soul on the street and barely any cabs around. That call was from the hospital. The doctor said Grandma's condition had gotten worse. They told me to get there ASAP when I heard that. It felt like the sky was falling. I needed to get to the hospital. I had zero time to think about the mess with Ruby, but after waiting over 10 minutes, not a single cab showed up. The Maybach was slowly rolling in from a distance. I was desperate to get to the hospital, so I gritted my teeth and ran into the middle of the road. Tires screeched through the quiet street. I slowly opened my eyes. The Maybach had stopped less than 4 inches from me. If the driver had been even a split second slower, or a little less skilled, I would have been launched right through the air. I didn't even have time to be scared. I rushed to the car and banged on the driver's window. The tinted window rolled down, and the driver looked at me with concern and asked, "Hey kid, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sir. Please can you take me to the hospital?" The driver glanced nervously at the back seat where a cold, elegant woman was sitting. I knew the driver answered to her, so I walked straight to the back seat and knocked on the window. "Ma'am, could you give me a ride? My grandma's in critical condition. I need to get to the hospital. Please help me." The driver heard what I said.